Hello, my name is David Crosby. I'm one of the clinical specialists here at LifeFlow with significant experience as a firefighter EMT, as well as 25 years as a registered nurse in the ED, ICU, and air and ground transport settings. I want to introduce you to LifeFlow and provide a quick tutorial on how to set it up and deploy our rapid infuser in virtually any setting. LifeFlow Plus is a hand-operated rapid infuser that comes kitted with everything you need inside the bag. You provide the patient appropriate vascular access and the fluid of choice, and everything else you need is in the package. When you unbundle everything in the package, the working parts of our device are a tubing set and a handle. There's also two additional pieces of paperwork in the package that are very important. The first of those that I'll introduce you to is the instructions for use. This is a comprehensive guide that is chock full of great information that tells you everything you need to know about using LifeFlow, including that LifeFlow is indicated for use in patients 3 kilograms, 28 days or greater, that it was designed to be used for IV sizes 24 gauge and larger for crystalloids, 22 gauge and larger for blood products, and in all patients for those with adequate vascular access. If using LifeFlow with an indwelling line, you want to ensure that PICS, ports, or central lines are power, contrast, or pressure rated. Setup of the device is very similar to regular blood tubing, but there are a couple key features, including safety features and mechanical advantage features that may be new to you. To start with, we'll take our tubing out of the package. Once we open the tubing up, you'll see that LifeFlow on the top half looks very much like standard blood tubing. 2 spikes, 2 roller clamps, and a 200 micron blood filter. Immediately below the blood filter, you'll notice our air check chamber. In standard IV tubing, this is a drip chamber where we prime and leave an air gap. With LifeFlow, we also prime here, but we don't leave an air gap, filling both of these chambers up with blood or fluid. The blue ball you see is an air check. That prevents air from getting in the distal tubing at the completion of a bag of fluids or blood. I'll show you how that works once we're primed and ready to go. Distally, the working portion of LifeFlow is a 10 ml syringe permanently attached to a stopcock with one-way valves. This is essentially push-pull that has been automated by use of the one-way valves. Immediately distal to the 10 ml syringe is a clamp and our force reducer. The force reducer is a safety device designed to mitigate the amount of pressure generated by LifeFlow during infusion. In short, there's a soft, flexible tubing on the inside that's expandable and rigid tubing on the outside. The rigid tubing, of course, prevents the soft, flexible tubing from overexpanding. If you're using LifeFlow on a small gauge IV or encounter resistance, the tubing inside will swell to absorb some of the pressure of the infusion. Immediately distal, you have a Y site, and connection at the distal end is with a standard lure. If you are also going to be using LifeFlow with a Q&Flow Warrior warmer, please see the supplement at the end of this video for connecting the two, as you would want to set up and prime both of these at once. The handle comes with a piece of black shipping material that is best left in place until you're ready to start infusion. I'll begin by spiking my bags and closing the clamps and removing the protective caps. LifeFlow can be used with a single bag of blood or fluids or with multiple bags depending on the user's preference, with emphasis on ensuring that both clamps are closed during initial setup. To begin the priming function, open the roller clamp and I'll start priming with saline. To prime, squeeze just above the blue air check ball and remove all of the air from both chambers. If a small amount of air remains behind the blood filter or above it, continue with priming the lower portion of the tubing. To do that, we're going to incorporate the handle. I'm now ready to use the handle, so I'll remove the shipping material, and I want to open the handle. Down towards the nose, you'll encounter 2 pinch points on the clear cover, pinch to open. I'm now ready to connect the LifeFlow syringe with the handle. This is easily done by putting the white plunger into the blue slot with the numbers up. Once in place, the canopy can be closed and priming can continue. This is the only time we recommend a specific position for LifeFlow. During the initial priming to remove air most effectively, point the handle up and begin squeezing the handle. Very quickly, you'll see fluid enter the syringe and the distal tubing. I'm now primed down to the end of the tubing and I'm ready to connect to the patient. For today's purposes, we'll be connecting to a drain bag. To begin infusion, squeeze the handle while simultaneously palpating proximal to the patient's head. As you can see, administration is done by squeezing the handle. Each full squeeze of the handle delivers 10 ml of blood or fluids to the patient. Please note that if any resistance is encountered, it's a good idea to troubleshoot and see if there are any obstructions between your distal line and the IV itself. If none are encountered, continue infusion. That is proper setup and use of LifeFlow. Let's talk about a few of the safety features. Beginning at the distal end of the tubing, you do have the force reducer. While this may be difficult to see on camera, if resistance is encountered at the distal end of the tubing, while you're squeezing the handle, the inner tubing may swell. This will also slow you down. This is a guide on how effectively the volume is getting through the tubing and proceeding through the vascular access. If during administration you see that this tubing becomes and remains engorged, it's a good idea to troubleshoot, checking everything between the handle and your vascular access. Note that LifeFlow is a very tactile device. You should easily be able to squeeze even on smaller gauge IVs. Moving up the tubing, our next safety feature is the air check. The air check is designed to prevent air from entering the distal tubing at the completion of an infusion. Ideally, like any other IV infusion, you would stop when a small amount of fluid remains in the bottom of the bag. However, if you should continue infusing, and I've inverted the bag to simulate air entering the system, you'll see that as air enters the system, the blue air check ball is going to come to the bottom of the tubing and occlude or suction to the bottom. My handle is no longer returning. As I mentioned before, LifeFlow is a very tactile device. If you notice a change in the ease of squeezing or in it returning and refilling, stop and troubleshoot. Here I notice that my handle will no longer return or refill. I'm going to check the tubing between the handle and my IV fluids, noting that I have emptied my bag. I have two options at this point for how to continue infusion. I can spike and hang another bag and reprime, or I could close the clamp on my saline, open it on blood, and continue the infusion that way. For this demonstration, I'll reprime with saline, removing all of the air, very similar to how we set up the device initially. Once that step is done, I'm ready to release the air check ball. In small blue letters right below the ball, you'll see it says release. Once the air check chamber has been completely reprimed, if you will pinch below the blue ball to release it, it will again float, the handle returns, and you'll note that there is no air in the distal tubing. You're ready to continue infusion again. The third and final safety feature of LifeFlow is a terminal feature built into the handle. If significant resistance is encountered, the handle is built with a fuse and may break away during strenuous exertion. To simulate the type of pressure I'm talking about, I'm going to close the clamp. Note that my infusion of LifeFlow has been very easy. If I should return to LifeFlow and I find it difficult to squeeze, avoid the temptation to squeeze even harder. If additional pressure is applied, this handle may break away. In that event, the handle is no longer usable. However, you may be able to remove the syringe and complete your infusion using standard push-pull technique. These are the three primary safety features that are built into LifeFlow. Now let's talk about some things that can go wrong during initial setup, otherwise known as troubleshooting. We'll return everything to the way it came out of the bag, and we'll start again. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that I prefer to leave the black shipping material intact. The reason for that is quite simple. If this is removed early on, new users may be tempted to squeeze and deploy the handle. If you do this, it is no longer in the proper loading position. To demonstrate, I'll open the canopy and I'll place the syringe inside the handle. Note that the syringe fits and I can close the canopy, but what I don't have is the syringe locked into the blue saddle. So when I start to squeeze, it doesn't engage and I have no flow. There's a quick and easy fix for this situation. Open the canopy, remove the syringe, and then grabbing the handle, pull the handle all the way back and press the black button to lock. This returns the handle to loading position, and when I place the white syringe in the blue slot, now everything fits properly. I can close and start my infusion. Another troubleshooting tip that may come in handy is if we're in a similar situation where a user has deployed the handle and it's not in the correct position, I may find that when I put the syringe in, lock the handle, the syringe may actually fit in front of the blue saddle. This will give you a very different tactile feel. At this point, the handle appears to be jammed and I cannot unlock the handle. The reason for that is the white plunger is in the space needed to unlock the handle. To fix, simply remove the plunger, put the white plunger in the blue slot, and squeeze the handle. Placing the syringe in the handle incorrectly is the most common new user troubleshooting tip. Another troubleshooting tip is to make sure you check your clamp. If you find that the handle is unable to be squeezed, ensure that the clamp has not been deployed. If it has, simply release the clamp and you should find that flow returns. Now let's transition to transfusion with blood. Since the tubing is set up and primed with saline, I'll close my saline clamp, open my blood clamp, and give a quick squeeze to remove the air from that tubing. You can see that blood enters the tubing, and from this point, all I need to do is operate the handle to begin my transfusion. The last troubleshooting tip that I'd like to offer you is when it comes to ending a bag of blood and transporting the patient. At the end of a bag of blood, our blood banks do a very good job of removing air from the bag. You may experience something slightly different at the end of the transfusion because there's only a very small amount of air. You will still have a similar response in the handle and that it will stop returning. However, if you note the orientation of the air check chamber now, it appears to be suctioned together. That is because there is not a sufficient volume of air in the blood bag. The handle will still not return, but we need to correct this. The easiest way to do that is to close my blood, open my saline, and again, reprime. I hope you found this quick tutorial on setup and troubleshooting of LifeFlow Plus to be helpful. New users can expect to set up the device in under 2 minutes, while seasoned users may do so in approximately 1 minute. For additional resources or information regarding LifeFlow, please feel free to consult the more detailed instructions for use or the quick start guide. Thank you very much.